This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. It feels like every week I come on here and deconstruct something about how we talk about the draft, and today will be no different. So what I want to talk about is draft needs. And the reason I want to talk about them kind of more in depth when it comes to the Browns and what I think the Browns draft needs are is because when you put it out there, right, the Browns have these draft needs, and then you list out a bunch of positions, it makes it seem like if the Browns don't draft somebody at that position, they're in trouble. But that's not how quote unquote needs work. What people are actually doing is just analyzing a roster and looking, hey, where can there be an opportunity for the Cleveland Browns to draft somebody? These positions are the places that they have an opportunity to draft somebody that would have a significant opportunity to make something happen in the future. But we don't process all of that when we just call them draft needs. We just think of it as it sounds. Well, they need to draft somebody here. If they don't fill these needs, they had a bad draft. What I want to do is deconstruct that a little bit. So instead of just talking about draft needs as positions the Browns might or might not draft in, I want to talk about needs in levels. So level one draft need to me is you need an immediate starter. This is the true definition of a need, right? You have a roster, you need somebody to play quarterback. Quarterback is a need. You have a roster, you need somebody to play tackle week one. That's a need. You have a roster, you need somebody to play tight end week one. That's a need. It's not a need if you can draft a player and have them be a role player or all of those things. It's not a level one need to me. So level one to me is you need an immediate starter. Level two to me is you may need a starter in year one. Now, the reason this is above what I have is level three, and level three is a role player and somebody who could start in a couple of years. The reason I have that above it, even though a role player would see the field earlier, is because at the end of the day, a role player is a role player. A starter is a starter. And just because you need that starter next year does not mean that's not more important than having a role player this year. That makes sense. So that's why level two is you may need a starter in a year. You don't need them now. You can start the season at that position and be completely fine with what you got. But next year, you might need somebody to start. Okay. Level three, role player plus might be on a 2-year starter track, right? Like Cam Mitchell is a great example of this on the Cleveland Browns. He is drafted to be a role player, but he also has a 2-year track to start whenever Greg Newsome's contract was up or whatever happens with Denzel Ward, even Denzel Ward's under contract for a long time. So that's kind of what a level three need is. There's a role for him now. He could be the nickel corner. He could be a starting corner in a couple of years, but there's a long track here, right? Level four, to me, is a room that can really use an extra body for camp competitions. That player might get rostered. There's a little bit of an opportunity there, and this like whoever they drafted this position is more than likely going to be on the practice squad or be a candidate for the practice squad. That's what level four need is for me. And a level five need is a not need at all, right? The room's full. It doesn't make much sense to draft a player unless the value on the board is significantly higher than what the pick is at the time. So those are my categories of needs. Now I'm going to explain where the position groups on the Cleveland Browns fit in to those needs. So when it comes to level one needs, there is no position the Cleveland Browns have on this roster where they need an immediate starter. We can go through all the positions. There's not one. Left tackle, You're fine starting Jed Wills. Left guard, you're fine starting Joe Bitonio. Center, you're fine starting Ethan Posick. Right guard, you're fine starting Wyatt Teller. Right tackle, you're fine starting DeJuan Jones. Wide receiver, Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore. You're fine at all three positions running those with those guys right out the gate. Tight end, David Njoku. You're fine with David Njoku being there in that role, right? You flip it to the offense. The defense, my bad. Myles Garrett. I think we're all okay with Myles Garrett starting at the start of the season. You're fine with Zadarius Smith starting. You're fine with Dalvin Tomlinson starting. You're fine with whoever is at DT2, whether it be Quentin Jefferson, Maurice Hurst, or Shelby Harris starting at the second defensive tackle position. There's really no need for a starter there. At linebacker, you're fine with JOK. You're fine with Jordan Hicks. There's going to be a competition for that third spot, but if it comes down to Tony Fields, you've started games with them there before. You're fine with Tony Fields. You're good there. When it comes to safety, Juan Thornhill, Grant Delpit, Ronnie McLeod. That's three guys that could start. You're fine at that position. Corner, you're fine there too. Martin Emerson, Greg Newsome, Denzel Ward. I don't anticipate them trading Greg Newsome because I don't think that Greg Newsome trading him at this point makes your team any better. And the Browns aren't in position to make their team worse to get better in the future. They're in full win now mode. So there's no position group on this team that needs an immediate starter. There's no level one need for this team, which puts them in a good place when it comes to the draft because that means they could just take whoever's on their board. But there are tiers to this need thing, right? Like it's not just, okay, you don't need to start anywhere, you can draft whoever. But level two, they do have some needs, right? Left tackle is a level two need. Jed Wills is there for now. Jed Wills is up for an extension. Here's what we know about the Cleveland Browns. When they want to keep somebody, the deal usually gets done before time. If we get past the middle of the season, there's no Jed Wills deal done, but there's a JOK deal done. Writing's on the wall. Jed's going to see free agency. Jed leaves, you need a left tackle. You might need a starter in 1 year. Left guard. We just don't know what Joe Bitonio is going to be as time goes on. This is going to be his 10th season in the NFL. Joe Thomas retired 10 years into his NFL career. Now, I don't know what Joe is going to do after this season. I don't know what Joe's body is holding up like. He might be able to play for 5 more years. He might not. I know the Browns would prefer him to be here long term, but at this point, you kind of got to go year to year with Joel and make sure that he wants to be here and then make sure that he wants to play because it's very likely that he did 10 years. He's starting to have back issues pop up more and more often the last couple of years. It wouldn't surprise me if this was his last year in the NFL. It also wouldn't surprise me if he played 2-3 more years in the Cleveland Browns uniform, but you want to be ready for that soon. And that's why I put it in level 2. Like, I think you want to be ready for that. There's also the possibility to free up some space next year. You might trade Wyatt Teller if you want to bring a new name in. And that's why guard is there. So left guard specifically, but right guard could factor in there as well. Wide receiver is somewhere where you're going to need a starter because of the 3, let's say you extend Amari Cooper, you already have Jerry Jeudy under contract. There's still one more wide receiver position up for grabs. It could be Cedric Tillman. It could be somebody you draft this year. It could be somebody that you sign in free agency. The Browns aren't really one to sign a wide receiver in true free agency because the price is super expensive there, especially for a wide receiver 3. So I would anticipate that they try to get this position through the draft. So wide receiver remains a level 2 need. Might not be a starter this year, might not even see the field much this year, but may be in line to get a starting role next year. And I do consider the third wide receiver on a team that runs a ton of 11 personnel to be a starter, in my opinion. All right, let's go to level 3 needs, right? To remind you, level 3 need is somebody who could be a role player today and a starter in a couple of years. I think linebacker is one of those spots. We have to face it. With nickel being used as much as it is in the NFL, the third linebacker position is becoming a role player position, not really a starting position because you're not in base more than you're in nickel nowadays, right? Especially when you have JOK and Grant Delpit on your roster with 3 different safeties. The way the Browns have structured this tells me that they're going to be in nickel a lot. So to me, that third linebacker, like Jordan Hicks, starter, JOK, starter. Outside of that, it's role players to me. Like, it's going to be a role that gets played. It's kind of like a slot corner now. Not in terms of position responsibility, but in terms of snaps. So I see it as a role. So linebacker is a role to me. Right guard, they're going to need somebody to be tackle eligible, right? If they're going to lose James Hudson to free agency or whatever happens. Well, I think James Hudson's still on the team, but maybe they want somebody to challenge James Hudson that rule. So tackle eligible, that role might be available this year. And again, they're going to need a guard to replace Wyatt Teller in a couple of years. Maybe that becomes the position they look at. So maybe right guard. Defensive tackle, not really too much room in the rotation this year, but the Browns have a ton of guys on one-year deals, right? They have, I believe, Shelby Harris is on a one-year deal. Maurice Hurst is on a one-year deal. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Quentin Jefferson is on a 2-year technically. I'm not 100% about that, but it could very easily be a 1-year deal. And Dalvin Tomlinson's deal ends up in like 2025 or 2026. So he'll be coming up soon. So there'll be some need in a couple of years for a defensive tackle. Not necessarily this year, not even necessarily next year, but in a couple of years, there might be a role available for defensive tackle. That's why I have it as my level 3 need for the Browns. All right, level 4 is when we stop talking about need, and it'd just be nice to add a player here if you want to. Again, you can just have a body in there for camp. Maybe he can compete to make the roster. Maybe he doesn't. But these are the positions where I'm like, hey, I'm not mad that you drafted a player at this position because I see that there's a chance that if the player is unusual for their draft selection, that they could make the roster. Like if they're a 5th round pick that you have as a day 2 guy, okay, cool. These position groups are as follow. Edge, not really a ton of room at the edge position. You got Myles Garrett, you got Zadarius Smith. You have to fit Alex Wright in there. You have to fit Obo Okoronkwo in there. You just brought back Sam Kamara. That's already 5 names there. I mean, they're full almost at edge. You can add one name that compete with Sam Kamara and Isaiah Thomas and Isaiah McGuire, but again, not a ton of room there at edge. Tight end is another one where there's not a ton of room. Jordan Atkins, David Njoku, they might move to more, 13 personnel sets than they did last year, but I don't think they're going to do that. The twin tight end stuff, they have the 2 tight ends for that. They really didn't utilize it too much last year. I don't expect that to change. Again, if somebody unusual drops to them at a certain spot at tight end, they'll be open to taking it and kind of reshaping the roster a little bit, but I'd be hard pressed to see them take it. Somebody they only see as a right tackle is another one, right? They might take a tackle they feel like can flip, but they're not going to take a guy that they feel like can only play right tackle. They're just too overloaded at that position. They already have the DeJuan Jones, Jack Conklin debate. You add that James Hudson is still on the roster, I believe. So you got those 3 just there. Where's there room for another true right tackle? I just don't see it. Defensive back. I mean, you talk about Denzel Ward, you talk about Martin Emerson, we talked about Greg Newsome. So those are 3 names there. You have AJ Green behind some of those guys. Like you already had Cam Mitchell. You don't really have a ton of room. You can draft somebody here to be in the back end of that draft to kind of compete for a spot, but there's not really a ton there. Quarterback, I almost put this at my it's full list, but the one thing that keeps me away from putting quarterback on the it's full list is that I'm never going to be mad at a team for taking a flyer at quarterback just to see if it works out for them, right? And if they see somebody they like, similar to what DTR was last year, and they want to give it a chance in preseason, I don't mind that ever at the quarterback position. But let's be real about it. The position group is full. You already signed Jameis Winston to back up Deshaun Watson. You have Deshaun Watson obviously under contract for the next few years. And then you have Tyler Huntley there, who is a plus level backup at 3rd string. And then you have DTR, who's a regular level backup. And he might get cut, traded, or put on the practice squad. So where is there room for another one unless you're going to trade one of those guys or move off of one of those guys? I mean, you don't usually carry 5 quarterbacks into camp. So I would be very shocked if they take a quarterback, but something can always happen. Maybe they trade DTR. All right, level 5. The room's full. There's literally no more room for anybody on any row. Safety. You signed Juan Thornhill last year. He's under contract for the next couple of years. You also have Rodney McLeod on a new 1-year deal. You have Grant Delpit on a new contract, so he's going to be here for a little while. Then you have guys like DeAnthony Bell, who you like a lot. You guys got guys like Ronnie Hickman, who you like a lot. It's already 5 guys. It's a 3-man rotation. I don't see them adding another starter. or another player to that room. That room seems pretty full to me. You already don't have enough room in that room for like talented players like DeAnthony Bell to play or Ronnie Hickman. Not really a room I think they're going to take in. Running back's another one. And I don't think they're going to take a running back in this draft just because I don't think the class is good. And I don't think they like the class, but also they have Nick Chubb coming back from injury. Despite what the internet will tell you, I think the Browns do like Jerome Ford. He did put up decent numbers with them last year. He might not be a bell cow back, but he does have some value, significant value at the running back position. Pierre Strong is somebody they invested a draft pick in last year for a trade. So I don't think they're going to be too eager to cut him. You also have... Who else did they? Oh, Donta Foreman. I mean, we're already talking about Nyheim Hines. We're talking about 5 running backs. You know, unless you think that this guy can start in a couple years, there's probably not going to be a running back taken. So I don't think running back's really on their radar this year. Center is another position I don't think is on their radar. They took Luke Whippler last year. They have Ethan Posick under contract to the end of 2025. Ethan Posick is young enough to where you can extend him again. I see no reason for them to draft another center. All right, and the last 2 positions I definitely have on the room is full list is kicker. They have Dustin Hopkins, who was excellent last year, and then they also brought back Cade York, who can come in and, you know, maybe be on the practice squad all year, be a project. So when Dustin Hopkins does leave, you can bring in Cade York to replace him. But yeah, I think they're full. I think they're full at the kicker position. Same thing with punter. Don't really see them investing a draft pick on punter. So those are my draft needs for the Cleveland Browns. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Do you think I'm underestimating a position? Do you disagree with why I put a position group where I put it? Or do you agree with everything? Let me know in the comment section below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.